There's something fascinating about watching Carlos Alcaraz walk off a tennis court. Even after winning, there's this intensity in his eyes, this constant analysis happening in real time. And after his second round match at the Australian Open, something really interesting happened. The young Spaniard sat down with his team, and what they told him completely changed his perspective on how he'd actually played. It's one of those moments that really shows you the difference between how we see ourselves and how others see us, especially at the highest level of professional tennis. So, Carlos Alcaraz just advanced to the third round of the Australian Open, and on paper, everything looks fine. He won his match, he's progressing through the draw, and he's one step closer to potentially adding another Grand Slam title to his collection. But here's where it gets interesting. After the match, Alcaraz wasn't exactly thrilled with his performance. You could see it in his body language during the press conference, hear it in the way he was describing his shots, his movement, his decision-making. He was being hard on himself, which honestly isn't surprising for someone who's reached the top of the sport at such a young age. That perfectionist mindset is probably part of what got him there in the first place. But then, something shifted. Alcaraz revealed that when he sat down with his coaching team, they showed him something he hadn't noticed in the heat of competition. They walked him through the match, probably reviewed some video, analyzed key moments, and their conclusion was pretty clear. He had actually played better than he thought. And that's such a powerful statement when you really think about it. Here's one of the best tennis players in the world, someone who lives and breathes this sport, and even he can miss the bigger picture when he's out there grinding through a match in the Australian heat. It makes you wonder how often this happens to athletes at every level, where the internal narrative doesn't match the external reality. The Australian Open has always been a unique challenge for players. The heat in Melbourne can be absolutely brutal, and we're talking about temperatures that turn the court into something resembling a frying pan. Players have literally collapsed out there, had to take medical timeouts for heat-related issues, and push their bodies to limits that seem almost inhuman. When you're playing in those conditions, your perception of how you're performing can get really distorted. You're focused on just surviving the next point, the next game, the next set. You're not thinking about the beautiful backhand winner you hit 10 minutes ago, or the incredible defense to offense transition that had the crowd on their feet. You're thinking about your heart rate, your breathing, whether you can make it through another long rally without cramping up. For Alcaraz specifically, this tournament has extra significance. He's coming into 2025 with enormous expectations, as he always does now. The tennis world has basically anointed him as one of the faces of the sport's future, alongside players like Jannik Sinner. Every match is scrutinized, every performance is analyzed to death, and there's this constant conversation about whether he's living up to the hype. It's a lot of pressure for someone who's still in the early stages of their career, even though he's already won multiple Grand Slam titles. That kind of pressure can mess with your head, make you second-guess yourself even when you're doing everything right. What his team told him is really valuable insight into the coaching relationship at the elite level. These aren't just people who hand you water bottles and say encouraging things between points. They're watching every single thing you do with trained eyes that have seen thousands of matches. They're picking up on patterns you don't notice, seeing strengths you're taking for granted, identifying weaknesses that need work, but also recognizing when those weaknesses didn't actually hurt you in a particular match. Juan Carlos Ferrero, Alcaraz's coach, has been through this himself as a former #1 player. He knows what it's like to be in that pressure cooker, to feel like you didn't play well even when the scoreboard says otherwise. The comment about playing better than he thought also tells us something about Alcaraz's mentality. He's not someone who's easily satisfied. Even in victory, he's looking for flaws, searching for areas to improve. That's the mentality of a champion, but it can also be exhausting if you let it consume you. There's a balance between being self-critical enough to keep improving and being so hard on yourself that you can't enjoy the journey. His team seems to be providing that balance. helping him see the positive aspects of his performance that he might be overlooking in his own analysis. Looking at the actual tennis, what probably happened is pretty common. Alcaraz likely felt rushed on certain shots, felt like his timing was off, maybe thought he was making too many unforced errors, or not converting break points as efficiently as he wanted. In his mind, the match probably felt scrappy, uncomfortable, like he was fighting himself as much as his opponent. But when you watch it back, when you look at the statistics, when you analyze the crucial moments, a different picture emerges. Maybe his first serve percentage was actually solid. Maybe he won the big points when it mattered. Maybe his movement was better than he realized, allowing him to get balls back that most players wouldn't reach. These details get lost when you're in the arena, dealing with the noise, the pressure, the physical exhaustion. The thing about professional tennis that casual fans don't always understand is how much the mental game can distort reality. When you're out there competing, everything feels amplified. A couple of double faults feel like 10. Missing a breakpoint opportunity feels catastrophic. Your opponent's winners seem more impressive than yours. It's like looking at yourself in a funhouse mirror. The proportions are all wrong. The perspective is skewed. That's where having experienced coaches becomes absolutely critical. They're watching from the outside, they've got the actual numbers, they can see the patterns developing over the course of a match. They know when you're being too hard on yourself and when legitimate concerns need to be addressed. The third round match on Friday is going to be interesting to watch with this context in mind. Alcaraz now goes in with a potentially different mindset. Instead of carrying doubt or frustration from the second round, he's got this validation from his team that he's actually playing better tennis than his internal monologue was telling him. That's huge from a confidence perspective. Confidence in tennis is everything. It's the difference between going for that big forehand down the line and playing it safe with a cross-court shot. It's the difference between serving out a match smoothly and tightening up when you're trying to close it out. Mental state affects everything in this sport, maybe more than any other sport because you're out there alone with your thoughts for hours at a time. Think about how different tennis is from team sports in this regard. If you're playing basketball and you think you're having a bad game, your teammates can immediately tell you otherwise. They're right there with you, experiencing the same moments, seeing your contributions in real time. But in tennis, you're isolated. You can't talk to your coach during the match except at very specific times. You're left alone with whatever narrative your brain is creating about your performance. And brains, especially competitive brains, tend to focus on the negative. It's a survival mechanism in a way. You're constantly looking for threats, for problems that need solving. But sometimes there aren't as many problems as you think there are. The Australian Open draw this year is absolutely stacked, as it always is at a Grand Slam. Every round gets progressively harder, and by the time you reach the quarterfinals and semifinals, you're facing the absolute elite of the sport. Alcaraz knows he needs to be playing his best tennis to have a chance at winning this tournament. The fact that his team is already seeing high-quality tennis from him, even when he's not seeing it himself, is a really positive sign for his chances as the tournament progresses. It means he has room to feel even better about his game, room to build momentum, room to grow into the tournament rather than trying to fix problems that might not actually exist. One thing that's easy to forget about these top players is how young many of them still are. Alcaraz is barely in his 20s, and he's already accomplished things that most players never do in their entire careers. But with that youth comes inexperience in certain areas, particularly in managing expectations and handling the psychological aspects of being a favorite at every tournament you enter. Learning to accurately assess your own performance is a skill that develops over time. Some players never quite get it right. They either think they're playing better than they are or worse than they are, and neither is ideal. The ability to have a realistic, balanced view of your game is something that can take years to develop. Roger Federer talked about this in his later years, about how it took him a long time to learn how to properly evaluate his performances. Early in his career, he'd get frustrated with matches he won because he focused on the few things that went wrong rather than the many things that went right. It wasn't until he matured as a player and a person that he learned to have a more balanced perspective. Rafael Nadal has always been known for being incredibly self-critical, sometimes to a fault. Even after dominant victories, he'll talk about things he needs to improve. It's part of what made him great, but you could also see the toll it took on him mentally at times. The best players eventually learn to find that sweet spot between self-criticism and self-appreciation. What makes this story resonate is how relatable it is, even though we're talking about professional tennis at the highest level. We've all had experiences where we thought we performed poorly at something, whether it's a work presentation, a creative project, or a conversation we had with someone important, and then someone else tells us it actually went really well. We're often our own harshest critics, unable to see the good things we're doing because we're so focused on the perceived mistakes. Having people around you who can provide that outside perspective is invaluable, whether you're competing at the Australian Open or just trying to navigate your daily life. The coaching team's role in modern tennis has become so much more sophisticated than it used to be. It's not just about technical adjustments to your forehand or serving motion anymore. It's sports psychology, it's data analysis, it's nutrition, it's recovery protocols, it's media training, and yes, it's also being that voice of reason when a player's self-assessment doesn't match reality. Ferrero and the rest of Alcaraz's team are giving him something that's almost more valuable than tactical advice. They're giving him permission to feel good about his tennis, even when his inner critic is trying to tear it apart. There's also something to be said about the evolution of coaching in tennis specifically. Back in the day, coaches were often former players who relied mainly on their experience and intuition. They'd watch you play and give you feedback based on what they saw and what they knew from their own careers. That's still valuable? Don't get me wrong, but now there's so much more available. Teams have access to incredibly detailed statistics about every aspect of a player's game. They can break down serving patterns, return positions, rally lengths, shot selection in different scenarios. They can compare your current performance to your historical averages. They can identify trends that the naked eye might miss. This data-driven approach combined with traditional coaching wisdom creates a really powerful combination. For someone like Alcaraz, who's still developing as a player despite his already impressive achievements, this kind of comprehensive support system is crucial. He's at a stage in his career where small adjustments and mental refinements can make huge differences. The physical tools are there. Everyone can see that. The guy moves like a gazelle and hits the ball like he's got rockets in his racket. But the mental side, the ability to stay confident and composed through the ups and downs of a long tournament, that's what separates the good from the great from the legendary. And having a team that can help you maintain perspective, that can show you when you're being too hard on yourself, that's an enormous advantage. As we look ahead to Friday's third-round match, there's a lot to be excited about. Alcaraz is going to step onto that court with this new understanding of his second-round performance. He's going to have the confidence boost that comes from his team's analysis. And most importantly, he's going to continue this learning process of understanding himself as a player and as a competitor. Every match at a Grand Slam is a learning experience, even for someone who's already won multiple majors. The journey of self-discovery never really ends in professional sports. You're constantly evolving, constantly adjusting, constantly trying to find that perfect balance between self-criticism and self-belief. The weather forecast for Melbourne shows more hot conditions ahead, which means the physical challenge isn't going away. The mental challenge certainly isn't either. As the rounds progress and the competition gets tougher, being in the right headspace becomes even more important. You can have the best forehand in the world, but if you don't believe in it when you need it most, it's not going to help you. Conversely, if you believe in your game, even when it's not firing on all cylinders, you can find ways to win matches you probably shouldn't. That's what champions do. They find ways to win even on their off days. The Australian Open has given us so many memorable moments over the years, and this tournament is already shaping up to be another classic. But sometimes the most interesting stories aren't the five-set thrillers or the upset victories. Sometimes they're the quiet moments after the match, when a player sits down with their team and gains a new perspective on their own game. That's what makes tennis so compelling. It's not just about the physical battle on the court. It's about the mental and emotional journey that every player goes through. Alcaraz's honesty about this experience, his willingness to share that he needed his team's perspective to see his own performance clearly, shows a maturity that bodes well for his future. Players who can be vulnerable, who can admit they don't have all the answers, who can lean on their support system, those are the players who tend to have long, successful careers. It's not about being invincible or perfect. It's about being adaptable, coachable, and self-aware enough to know when you need to adjust your thinking. The tennis season is long and grueling. The Australian Open is just the first Grand Slam of the year. There's still the clay court season leading to the French Open, the grass court season with Wimbledon, the hard court summer culminating in the US Open. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Learning to manage your expectations and your self-perception early in the season can set the tone for everything that follows. If Alcaraz can take this lesson from the Australian Open, that sometimes he's playing better than he thinks, and carry it forward through the rest of the year, it could make a significant difference in his results. The relationship between perception and reality in sports is endlessly fascinating. What you think is happening and what's actually happening can be two very different things. The best athletes learn to bridge that gap, to see themselves more clearly, to trust in their preparation and their abilities even when doubt creeps in. They learn to use feedback from trusted sources to calibrate their internal compass. They understand that being self-critical is good, but being too self-critical is counterproductive. It's a delicate balance, and it's different for every player. So when Friday rolls around and Alcaraz walks onto the court for his third-round match, remember that there's more going on than just the tennis we see. There's this entire internal dialogue, this relationship with his coaching team, this process of learning to see himself accurately, and that process, that journey, is just as important as any forehand winner or ace he hits, because at the end of the day, tennis is played between the ears as much as it's played with a racket. The players who master both aspects of the game are the ones who lift trophies, and based on everything we're seeing from Alcaraz, including this moment of insight after his second-round win, he's well on his way to adding more silverware to his collection. The beauty of this situation is that it's a win-win for Alcaraz. If he was right and he wasn't playing that well, then getting that reality check from his team helps him adjust and improve. But if his team was right and he was playing better than he thought, then he gets a confidence boost and can build on that positive momentum. Either way, he's learning and growing. That's the mark of a true professional, someone who's always seeking to get better, always open to feedback, always willing to challenge their own perceptions. Looking at the bigger picture, this incident also highlights why having the right team around you is so important in professional sports. You could be the most talented player in the world, but if you don't have people around you who can provide honest, accurate feedback, you're going to struggle. You need people who know the game, who know you, who can tell you the truth even when it's not what you want to hear. But equally important, you need people who can show you the positive things you're missing, who can build you up when you're tearing yourself down. That's what Alcaraz has with Ferrero and his team, and it's a huge part of why he's been so successful at such a young age. The Australian Summer Slam continues. The tournament marches forward, and Carlos Alcaraz marches with it. But now he does so with a slightly different perspective, a little more confidence, and the knowledge that sometimes we need others to help us see what we can't see ourselves. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And in a sport as mentally demanding as tennis, wisdom might be the most valuable asset of all. The coming days will tell us whether this moment of clarity translates into better results on court, but one thing's for sure. Alcaraz is learning lessons that will serve him well, not just in this tournament, but throughout his entire career. And that's something worth paying attention to, regardless of how far he goes in Melbourne.